Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 8.7 and this is part 2. So now we're going to look at how to solve a quadratic trinomial equation, a quadratic equation when it is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0 and the a value is not equal to 1. So remember that last video for this section I showed you guys how to factor those trinomials when a is not 1, and I'm going to give you guys those steps because we are going to solve by factoring today. So looking at the two steps that I show you, and they're right here on the screen, you guys will make a diagram when you guys want to factor the trinomial, and this is just factoring without the equal to 0, but eventually after we factor we are going to put those equal to 0, the two factors, by using the zero product property, and then we can solve. So how do you factor? Well, make sure you guys do your diagram. You multiply the a value times the c value. That goes up here. Your b term goes down here. And then you guys have your two factors. You have to look for those numbers, two factors that will multiply to this number and give you guys the b value when you combine. And after you have that diagram, the x, step number 2, you make two binomials multiplying each other with the ax term and the two factors inside of the parentheses. So ax, you go back to the trinomial, there's the ax times the ax, and f1, which is factor number 1, f2. Now, very important, step 3. When a is not 1, it's something else than 1, make sure that you guys divide the binomials by its GCF if they have one, and usually they will have one. When a is not 1, you guys have to divide by the GCF. So let's go ahead and look at how to solve by factoring and using the zero product property. So you guys see two equations here, and it is a quadratic trinomial because the highest exponent for the x is a 2, so there's the quadratic equation, and it is a trinomial because you have three different terms. You guys can have a quadratic binomial and it is still a quadratic equation. So you guys factor it a little different when you guys have a binomial, but you guys have to know how to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. That's what I'm showing you guys in this video. So let's look at the first one here. We want to solve this quadratic equation, and notice that it's already equal to 0, and we are ready to use the zero product property. And that's what we want. We want everything equal to 0, but we do not have the factors, so we can set those equal to 0. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I am going to factor the trinomial that you guys see. So I'm going to put my diagram right here. I'm going to multiply the a value 4 times 15, and just in case you guys forgot, the a is the first term, b is the middle term or the second term with the x, and c is your constant. So you guys multiply 4 times 15, and that's going to equal positive 60. Now you guys have the middle term is 17, which is the b term right here, positive plus 17. And you guys need to find those two factors that will multiply to 60, but they do combine to 17. So the numbers that work are 12 and 5. 12 times 5 is 60, and 12 plus 5 is 17. And if you guys forgot how to find those numbers, you can watch my previous video, and it just helps you to understand how to look for those two factors. But you must have the factors that work. After you guys have those two factors, well, now you guys will set up your two binomials or your two parentheses here. You are going to take the ax term, so a is 4 in this case. I'm going to use a, which is 4, x, and 4x over here. I'm going to bring down my factors, plus 12 here, plus 5 over here. And you guys can put an equal to 0, so you guys know that we all have an equation. But be careful, because now we have to divide the binomials by its GCF, greatest common factor. So the 4 and the 12, you guys can divide. Why do we have to divide? Well, check. If you guys multiply 4x times 4x, that's going to be 16x squared. We don't have a 16x squared in the trinomial. We have a 4x. So every time you guys factor and to check, you distribute and you multiply, you have to get this back. If you guys don't get that back, then something is wrong. So that means here I have to divide by 2, but you know what? The greatest common factor is not 2. I just noticed that it's 4. You guys can divide by 4. So I'm going to divide by 4 here, divide by 4 over here. This one here, the 4 and the 5, you guys don't have a greatest common factor, so I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to have 1x plus 3, 12 divided by 4, and 4x plus 5 equal to 0. Now that you guys divided by the GCF, you are ready to solve. So you're going to equal those to 0, each binomial. So I'm going to take the first one, and I do have an x plus 3 here equal to 0. I'm going to take the second one, 4x plus 5 equal that to 0, and you guys solve. So the first one, I subtract 3 from both sides. This will cancel. So x equals negative 3 on this one. And over here, you guys subtract 5. So that cancels. 4x equals negative 5. Divide by 4 on both sides. That turns into 1. So the x value will be negative 5 over 4. Now your answer, remember we need brackets here. And I'm going to put a negative 3 and a negative 5 over 4. So those are my solutions. You guys have two answers because we have a quadratic equation. Quadratic means the degree is 2. So we have two answers. If the degree is 3, you have 3 answers. And you'll see those later on. But right now we do quadratic equations. Degree is 2. So let's try another one here. The next one, you guys don't have equal to 0. So the first thing is you must get everything equal to 0. So I am going to subtract this 15 here, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. That way I'm going to have everything on one side. So I'm going to have the negative 2 dx squared plus 13x minus 15 equal to 0. Now guys, everything is equal to 0 and you factor. But you notice that we have a negative at the beginning of that polynomial. So when you factor it and you have a negative at the beginning, you guys have to factor out that negative. Every time you guys have a negative, make sure you guys take that one out. You factor out. So I put the negative here. I'm going to change the signs because I'm going to divide by a negative. And if you guys look, negative divided by a negative right here will be positive 2x squared. A positive times a negative, that's a negative 13x. A negative right here divided by a negative, that'll be a positive 15. So what you are going to factor is the trinomial inside of the parentheses. So inside I have a positive 2, that's my a value, times 15. I am not going to use the one up here, guys. Nope, because I already factored out the negative. So I'm going to use this positive 2. So I do my diagram, I multiply the two numbers, that's going to be 30. My middle term is negative 13, two numbers that multiply to 30 and add up to negative 13. Careful guys, you have to check your signs. The numbers that work are negative 10 and negative 3. Because when you multiply a negative 10 times a negative 3, that's going to be a positive 30. And negative 10 minus 3, that's going to be negative 13 when you guys combine. Common mistake, students like to use the negative 15 and the 2. Negative 15 times 2 is not positive 30. That will be negative 30. So negative 15 and 2 don't work. Yeah, they do combine to negative 13, negative 15 plus 2, but they don't multiply to a positive 30. So make sure you guys check your signs every time you guys factor. So now, using those two factors, I'm going to have my two binomials here equal to 0. I'm going to have my a value, the one inside of the parentheses, not the one here. The one inside is a positive 2. So I'm going to have a 2x, 2x. I'm going to bring down the minus 10, the minus 3. I am going to divide by the GCF for every binomial. So I can divide by 2 here. So that's going to turn into a 1x minus 5 times a 2x minus 3 equal to 0. Now guys, when you actually factor out the negative, let's bring this one right here down right here. Okay, now you guys are ready to factor. The zero product property says that when you guys have two binomials multiplying and it equals to 0, you can equal those to 0. So we are ready to solve. We already factor, but we are ready to solve those binomials. Now we do have a negative outside of the parentheses, and it has an invisible 1. So that also applies to the zero product property. You guys will take this number, I'll put the 1 here so we know that's an invisible 1, and you take the negative 1 equal to 0. You guys will take this one, x minus 5 equal to 0. And you guys will take this one, 2x minus 3 equal to 0. But if you guys go back here, negative 1 equal to 0. First of all, there's no variable to solve. Second of all, that's not true. 0 equals negative 1. Nope. So we are going to cross that one out. We're not going to do anything to it. We're going to ignore it because it's a false statement and you cannot solve. But you guys can solve the next two equations. The x minus 5 equal to 0. You add 5 to both sides. So x equals 5. And the next one, you guys add 3 to both sides. So 2x equals 3. Divide by 2. So your answer will be, that turns into 1, 3 over 2. So my two answers will be 5 and 3 over 2. You guys can put the numbers backwards. 3 over 2 is smaller than 5. You guys can do that. But I'm not too picky with the order. So this is fine. 5 and 3 over 2 is your solution. All right, guys. So let's just try a couple more just to practice more solving quadratic equations by factoring. You guys are factoring and using the zero product property to solve. So let's look at the first one right here. I don't have equal to 0. So I'm going to get everything to one side. I have 6y. I'm going to subtract. I do the opposite. And I notice that I do have a like term on the left side. This one, 18y, it is a like term. So I'm going to subtract a 6y. So that's going to be 9y squared plus 12y minus 12 equal to 0. Okay, I'm looking at the variables and the numbers. 9y squared, 12, and 12 over here. Well, we can factor out a 3. And you guys can, no, I was thinking of the y's, but the y's you guys cannot factor out. We don't have a y here. So the only thing you guys can factor out is a 3. And let me put the equal to 0 here. So when I factor out the 3, I divide everything by 3. So 9 divided by 3, that's going to be 3y squared plus 12 divided by 3, that's 4, minus 12 divided by 3 is 4. So I'm ready to factor what's inside of the parentheses. I'm going to multiply the 3 times the negative 4, that's negative 12. My b value is 4, the one in the middle right here, positive 4. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add up to positive 4. That's going to be negative 6 and positive 2. Negative 6 times positive 2, that's negative 12. Oh, wait a minute. But that's not going to give me positive 4. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So you know what? Let's just change the signs. I'll make the 6 positive and the 2 negative. Positive 6 times negative 2, that's negative 12. And positive 6 times minus 2, positive 6 minus 2 is positive 12. Positive 4, sorry. It is 4, not 12. So now you guys are going to factor. So I do my two binomials equal to 0. I'm going to bring down my a value, 3. So I bring down the 3y plus 6. And on the next one, 3y minus 2. I make sure that I reduce. I can divide by 3 here. And I'm going to have 1y plus 2 times a 3y minus 2. You guys cannot reduce that binomial. You guys cannot divide. And remember that 3 that we factor out, well, we're just going to bring it down. Now we're ready to solve. This is factoring. Let's use the zero product property to solve for the variable. So I'm going to take the 3 equal to 0. I'm going to take the y plus 2 equal to 0. And the 3y minus 2 equal to 0. So going back to this one, 3 equals 0. Nope, that is false. We cannot solve, so we ignore it. And over here, I subtract 2 from both sides, so y equals negative 2. Over here, I add 2 to both sides, so 3y equals 2. Divide by 3. This turns into 1. So my y value equals 2 over 3. So my two answers will be negative 2 and 2 over 3. And And the last one I'm going to show you guys, same thing. You want to get everything on one side. Check if you guys can factor a GCF. If you can't, just make sure you guys factor the trinomial. Use the zero product property to solve. So remember that we are solving by factoring the trinomials, the quadratic equations. So let's go ahead and we are going to add a 2d, first of all, to both sides, plus 2d. So that's going to be a 6d squared plus a 7d equals, cancels, a negative 2. I don't have a 0 yet, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides right here. So that'll be 6d squared plus 7d plus 2 equal to 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Now, let's look at the trinomial. 6, 7, 2. Nope, they don't have a common factor. And 2 doesn't have a d. You guys cannot factor out the d. So I'm going to do my diagram. I'm going to multiply a times c. 6 times 2 is 12. My middle term is 7. Two numbers that multiply to 12 and add up to 7, 3 and 4. I'm going to do my two binomials equal to 0. So I have a 6d and a 6d. That's your a value, 6 with a d. I'm going to bring down the factors, plus 3, plus 4 over here. I make sure that I reduce. Yes, you can reduce by 3 here. And you guys can reduce by 2 over here. You divide by 2. So now you guys will have 2d plus 1. This should be a 3 here, guys, not a 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And we close the parentheses. And 6 divided by 2, that's going to be 3d plus a 2 equal to 0. Now, nothing is outside. Notice we didn't factor out a number. So we just equal those parentheses to 0. So 2d plus 1 equal to 0. And 3d plus 2 equal to 0. And you guys solve. So you subtract 1 from both sides. 2d equals negative 1. Divide by 2 here. That turns into 1. d equals negative 1/2. Over here, subtract 2 from both sides. So 3d equals negative 2. Divide by 3 here. Turns into 1. So d equals negative 2/3. So my two answers will be a negative 2/3 and negative 1/2. Alright guys, so this concludes my video solving quadratic equations by factoring. You guys have a quadratic trinomial. If you guys like my videos, you guys can click on that like button. You can also subscribe to my channel to get more updates. And make sure you guys practice. And I'll see you guys later.